Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel, Beyond Canada, Insights into the European Market. While we are waiting for our guests here, I think I can hear sound in the background. Yeah. Okay, so we are about to start a new District 3 dialogue. It's a series that we have created to provide our entrepreneurs with insight to knowledge, but also connections along their startup journey. It's also a series that we have created for this moment in order we can bring confidence and also good vibes in these very tough moments that we are facing nowadays. In our District 3 dialogues yesterday, we had the chance to talk to experts in 3 different ecosystems, experts from Pittsburgh, Boston, and Montreal, and we discussed AI and its implications. Last week, we had the chance to talk to VCs from Boston and Montreal about what's going on in investments and funds in life sciences. Next week, we will have the chance to talk to a social entrepreneur, the successful founder of Unscented Company. And finally, at the end of the month, we will be back to life sciences with our BioHub program, and we will discuss biomanufacturing and what's going on in this area at this very moment. So covering so many different topics, I'm sure that everyone can find something relevant for their business and for your specific moment now. For that, stay tuned by applying at district3center.ca so you can have our newsletter and know what's going on in our District 3 Dialogue series. I am Gisleine Silveira, and I'm responsible for the District 3 New York City Hub. It's part of a wider offer from District 3, where we are based at the most important trade partner of Canada, and also the second most dynamic startup ecosystem in the world. This is part of Global X because this is a service offered by District 3 that aims at providing entrepreneurs with possibilities, tools, and the means that they need to go beyond, to grow and go beyond Canada. For those who don't know, because we have a lot of participants today who are not part of District 3, we are a major innovation hub in Montreal. In the last 6 years, we have helped more than 530 startups along their journeys. We cover very different topics as you see, and areas as well. And we are very happy here today to have 2 awesome guests that will help these entrepreneurs to expand their horizons and bring insights into their journey. We know that at this very difficult moments when local economies are shrinking, we are kind of lost. It's more important than ever to understand how we can see and seize opportunities beyond our borders. That's why these guests are here today, because they have practical tools to help us to understand what's going on in Europe. They work day by day with companies, helping them to land their businesses and grow in that region. For us, it's very important, this perspective in a difficult moment like this. Even for companies who are not prepared to go international at this moment, understanding different scenarios and markets, it's super relevant, because even if you don't go, the competition will come as it's widespread nowadays. So it's very fundamental that we keep the pulse on what's going on out there. And also, by knowing these 2 experts that are here today, our entrepreneurs will expand their knowledge, but also their connections, which are fundamental pieces when you go into an international market. We know by experience and by research that getting out there, it's very important, but also difficult. So discussing with them and getting to know and get their contacts, it's a fundamental pieces to improve your scale up potential. Therefore, without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce our guests today in our discussion. And with a lot of optimism, let's see what they have to tell us about growing businesses in Europe. My first guest is Johan Danielsen. He is the founder and the expansion manager at Johoc, which is a network of market specialists, business people, and investors that help support startups to grow in Europe and find their next customer. Johan is also the board member in 7 companies. He is the investor and owner in 5 other ones. He has a very broad experience from being an entrepreneur, but also working with major companies. And his market experience covers China, UK, US, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. So it's quite broad, and we have a lot to learn with him. Johoc, with his company, in the company, has 25 startups that they help, and they have been involved in more than 120 different deals, mainly in Eastern Europe. He's from Sweden, but I cannot judge him for his choice of living in Barcelona nowadays. And Barcelona is also the place of our second guest, Isabelle Dessureau. Isabelle, she's running the office of the Quebec government in Barcelona, supporting Spain and Portugal. For more than 25 years, she has been involved with C-level positions in major companies, fast-growing ones, double-digit companies like Videotron or Groupe Sélection, which is a real estate company in Canada. She has had C-level positions in these companies, involved with strategy, communication, marketing, and corporate affairs. Isabelle, she is a forward thinker, and she sees herself as a master connector, which I'm sure that she is. Isabelle, recently she worked with women tech startups in India, and she brought a very interesting group to Montreal when we had the chance to work together and to know each other. So for sure, she's really this master connection, and I could prove that. She has also worked in different boards. She advised recently Zoo, which is the Cirque du Soleil accelerator in Montreal. So she's also a Concordia graduate, so part of our very close community here in District 3. So thank you very much, Johan and Isabelle, for joining us today. So thank you very much, and it will be a pleasure to discuss with you. As a moderator, we will have 30 to 40 minutes discussion, and we will open a Q&A session with our guests, welcoming questions from the audience. So if you want to insert your question at any moment, you just go to the Q&A mechanism on the bottom of the screen, and please send our questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Okay, so to start and to give you a moment to shine, let me start with Johan. Johan, you have working experience from major companies. I can name AstraZeneca, Sony Ericsson, Volvo, IKEA, Capgemini. So all very large companies. Tell us about this experience from working with major companies, but also being an entrepreneur and even founding a company that supports these entrepreneurs to expand in Europe.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, as you mentioned, I used to work for these large companies, and I always saw myself as being large company guy. I enjoy doing that, and but the experience you get from working at large companies, and for me, it's working for AstraZeneca and Sony Ericsson is the two companies I've learned most from. Because they're two different types of companies. You have AstraZeneca, which is a large pharmaceutical company where processes and structure is everything. Takes more or less 20 years, 50 to 20 years to develop a product. So it's better to do it right than to do something wrong. So it's rather quality than do it quickly. Learning from there and their process and structure, going into Sony Ericsson, which at the point where I joined them, we're a quite small company compared to AstraZeneca, at least, maybe 1,000, 1,500 people. But it was a completely different environment where you work more or less like a startup. So everything had to be done very quickly. You have to adapt to the market. You have to work quickly. The lifetime of a product in the mobile industry was very short, like 6 months. So having that in mind, working these companies, I also realized that many of the larger companies are similar. Even though they produce different things, the processes and the structure is the same. And one of my ideas, or the way I like to work, is to work with companies that are specialized in certain things. You can't, as a big company, be specialized in everything. So during my time at these companies, I worked with different departments, from sourcing to customer service and R&D, and I met with a lot of different suppliers that were supposed to help us, and many times they had great ideas, brilliant ideas, but they didn't really know how to sell. They sometimes could have an open goal, but that they failed because they didn't know how the customer worked. They didn't know the trigger points, how they make decisions, and what actually you should push for in order to make the deal. So having that in mind, some years later on, I was in contact with some other guys that had a startup that was actually broker on the Swedish market for consultants. And I thought, this is the opportunity to see if I've learned something from my experience in large companies and how to do deals and how to do business. So I went in as a CEO for this company and did that in Sweden for a couple of years. We grew from 1 million euros to 50 million euros in turnover in 4 years. And then I saw this thing within Europe, that Europe is not cooperating with each other. So that's the reason why I started Johawk, because I want to support this type of companies, how to grow in the European market and how to do deals in different countries. Because Europe is not one big country. It's 50, 60 different countries as the same number of different cultures. And when you're doing business, you have to do it locally. Because it's every country has their own way of doing business. So, and I don't know how they do business all over Europe, but what I want to connect these startups with is people that know how to do deals, how to know how the local market works. Because that's the way you sign. That's you need to get the insights, and that's what I want to do with Johawk, and that's why I want to continue working with small and mid-sized companies, because they also can adopt quite quickly. They can easily move, and they can work with customers, and they can adopt to what they need, but they just need guidance. And the way I see it, normally 50% of the making a deal is relationship. 50% is a product, 50% is the relationship. So if you have a good product, you're half there. But then you need to have a relationship, you need to know your customer, you need that guidance. And that's what we want to provide. And that's why I saw the need for many companies, both in Sweden and other places in Europe. They need to have the local knowledge, how to do business. It can be based on behavior, culture, but also understanding the customer where they are in the process and what is the trigger points. So that's my learning and what I want to share with the startups. I think you're on mute.
I will unmute, yeah. And we will be back later on all these points, Johan, about how you believe companies can make the deal, sell properly, and the importance of building these relationships and how they can proceed with that. So hold on, you have a lot to reveal to us. So let's call Isabel. And Isabel, you also have a very interesting background. You worked with major companies, but also helping startups and all businesses. You've worked inside major companies, and also now you are outside helping them to achieve success in the market. So tell us about this career, about these different perspectives that you have until what you do now.
Well, maybe a word, Gisleine, about the fact that I think that for the last 2 years, we were talking a lot about being agile, being resilient, and that with the crisis we're just in, because I don't think we're still out, now more than ever, for startups, but for big companies as well, being agile and being resilient should not only be in your DNA or in your attitude, it should be also in your structure. And what we're seeing is that the one that have adapted with major success in the last months were the one that they were big, but they were able to really quickly restructure their team with small team, asking them, let's say, to find out opportunities or way to go out of this crisis. So, you know, being multinational, but asking think tank within the structure to find innovation in a way disruptive startups would do it. So it was interesting for me, from being outside now of these major companies, to follow who has adapt their structure very quickly, the one that could have done it for sure. You said in the introduction that nowadays I see myself as a master connector. I think that my biggest asset is what I built through a reputation in the last more than 25 years, because I like to say that I started my career at 15 years old at McDonald's, where I learned what was a vision, what was a mission, what was corporate values and teamwork. And it has been an amazing training for me back a days. And after that, you know, a first 12 years or so in marketing agencies, from the smallest to the largest. And when I left National Public Relations, I was partner, and I did, like a lot of people have done, I joined my darling client that was Videotron. And then for another 12 years, I worked in major companies. And I think that those two companies were really, really in fast growing. And what I'm most proud of is that not only was I part of the team that was privileged to go through historical growth. This growth was not only profits and revenue, it was also job creation. It was also very important, customer satisfaction and employee engagement. And since we have a lot of entrepreneurs on the video today, I think that these are the things, you know, we're very proud about the financial figures, but what is, as we grow older, I think it's really the impact that you can have as a leader, as a manager, as an entrepreneur on human being. And when you change the life path of someone because of what you have done with passion professionally, I mean, this is really what you keep with us after that. And just maybe to close on your question, I think that more than ever, we can be as leaders, but also as entrepreneurs and managers, you can be respectful and bold. You can be organized and resilient. Resilient and fast moving. I think that now you can be very focused and creative and innovative as well. So it's not I like to say it's bipolar, but not in the negative sense of it.
Great. And Isabel, still with you, following on what you said, tell us about your specific activities nowadays, helping companies to land in Spain and Portugal. Do you think that this pandemic has changed or the importance of science, innovation, and international trade? What is the kind of support that is provided for entrepreneurs? And do you see it changing from now on?
Well, it's a long question. And I think we'll have the chance later on to talk maybe about specific help that startups and Quebec company can get from Investissement Québec, from Export Québec. I'll get to that. But just to say that we are lucky enough to be in a country and in a province where, let's say in Quebec, not a lot of people know, but we are a chief scientist, Rémi Quérillon. It's great to know that even within a province, a government, we have a chief scientist. And I think that more than ever in the last 2 years, the structure of government has massively invested in accelerator, incubator of startups and innovation program in Quebec. Of course, much more can be done. But if we look at what have been presented to venture in the last 2 months, I think we can also feel privileged to be to do business in Quebec and in Canada.
Great. Johan, coming back to you, you've mentioned in your introduction that Europe, it's very diverse, not to say complex. So we are talking about 51 countries, 630 million people. There are multiple hubs that make Europe also a very unique global startup scene. We can name Berlin, London, France, in Paris, Lisbon, Barcelona itself. Is it possible when we think about doing business to have this entrepreneurial panorama? What do you normally say to startups or businesses that want to land in Europe? You are muted.
There you go. For companies that want to come to Europe, I think it's the focus for them would be to look on which market they want to enter into. Because all these countries in Europe have their own startups, and they are also, it's not one, as you mentioned, one country. It's Europe is a lot of different countries, and also within the countries, the different startups are competing. So if you're going to go to Europe, you can have a soft landing in many different startup hubs around Europe. So I would recommend to look what you do, which market you would like to enter into, do your homework, investigate, and then to check which country, what kind of competition there are in that country, then go for that market. And the different startup hubs there are many. In every country there are a number of startup hubs, and you can find them more or less wherever you want, and as long as you're in the country, you can work with that market. So I wouldn't say you necessarily need to go to any of the major ones, depending on what you're searching for. Of course, if you want to have a development site, maybe the big tech hubs in Europe are of interest, but if you're going to go for the market, you're going to find customers, go where the customers are, or find a market where you think you have the biggest potential. Then instead of going to Berlin or Amsterdam, even though they are nice cities, but they're also expensive in that sense. So depending on what you're doing, go for where the business are instead of where the hubs are. If you're going to go to Europe, that's my recommendation. For instance, if you're going to go to Germany, if you have a logistics solution, for instance, then you should go to Hamburg instead of Berlin. Berlin is, even though it's the biggest hub, one of the biggest in Europe, it's you don't have the customers within logistic in Berlin. So you should go and focus on where the customers are if they are in a specific place. So that would be my recommendation, first of all, to investigate which markets and check the competition, and also for coming outside of Europe, I would say many of the European companies are not working in all of Europe. So many of the startups in Europe are very local. So there are a huge number of Spanish, French, working within the home market. So even coming from Canada, going to Europe, I would say you will have the same advantage or disadvantage, so to say, if you go into a specific country as one of the neighboring countries. So sometimes could be even easier if you're coming from outside of Europe, coming in, than coming from a neighbor country. So my recommendation is to go for look where you have the customers and which market, and also look at the size of the market depending on where you are in your product cycle. If you want to have a test pilot, look for the smaller ones. Look for maybe the Nordic countries. I'm partly because I'm from Sweden, but still, some of the Nordic countries are quite small. They're quite advanced in the technology side, so it's a perfect pilot market. So have a look where your customer are and decide on the market. That would be my recommendation for coming in from the outside.
Great. And Isabel, how can you complement this question? For in your case, companies are already looking at a specific market south of Europe. So what are the recommendations when they are starting to talk to you?
Yeah, you know, maybe a word on how it's structured right now to help a startup or a company, an SME, or even a bigger enterprise that want to export, because, you know, it's interesting to know that business who export grow almost 60% faster than those who don't. No, you were right at the beginning that it's important. It's not, that doesn't mean that your business is ready to at the right stage, and that you should export, and that you should export to Europe. But it's interesting to always have a plan for this and to prepare, because we know it's long. People have to be ready to sometimes, you know, and I don't know if Johan will be will agree with me, but you know, it can. I don't like to talk about years, but it can depend on the type of markets you are targeting. And yeah, and while the American market is very strong, it's vibrant. It worth developing the European market strategy for diversification and for risk, reducing your risk. And since right now exporters from Canada have the advantage of the Canadian dollar that is weakened, it's a major benefit as well for an exporter from Quebec. So I think that everything that Johan said is great, and there's organization that help you go through these phases of knowing, you know, doing a kind of a diagnostic of, are you ready for exportation? Help you with the market identification, because sometimes people think USA, it's very close, great, but you know, maybe the product you have is for a lifestyle that is very similar, Montreal, Barcelona, than Montreal, Iowa, or Arkansas, you know? So you have to find out with your specific product. And of course, you have to be the top in knowing your market better than anybody else, maybe not for your product, but for knowing and being the fast learner about what are your competitors doing on the international scene, because you have to find a niche. And Johan was saying it earlier, you don't arrive with an exportation strategy with your full portfolio of product. You have to pick the one that will allow you to really penetrate the market and raise awareness about your brand, about doing something different. And then with those buyers, distributors, your key messages will be more simple, your pitch will be crystal clear, and then you can open the rest of the portfolio after that.
Great. And Isabel, to complement your answer, are there any specific sectors or interests that you think that are calling attention at this moment for Canadian companies landing in the south of Europe?
Yes, yes, of course. North America was very much advanced compared to Europe and compared to some countries in Europe, like Spain and France, for teleworking. You know, in Spain, it was less than 10% of workers in Spain that were equipped to work remotely from home. So imagine the opportunity in the last 2 months and going on forward for all the solutions, helping companies and helping workers to adapt to this with dashboard solution, productivity solution, and on. That was massive. So you have to look also or which market were a bit behind in retail tech. So all the online shopping, retail tech is going to be major. This is another, because we have one of the biggest retailer in Spain that called Inditex, Zara, Mango, and on. So retail is great here. Ed tech, so all the education technology, of course, it's all over the world. But again, pick the markets that you can get data and assessment that they were a bit behind and that they need to quickly get to international standards and be able to compete with the other economies.
Great. Johan, let's follow this thread. So she talked about some sectors that are very relevant at this moment, like edtech, retail. Tell us a little bit about the portfolio of companies that you are working with and how you are shaping this portfolio in this current moment. The sectors and the type of companies, and how do you see them today and in the future?
I just want to say what Isabel said about what's happening in Europe now is, I totally agree. And one of the big opportunities is within the schools. Since Europe has closed most of the schools, it's a huge thing now to make sure that they can handle schools and kids from home. So that's a great opportunity for anyone. Of course, this is maybe the first time we have this pandemic, but it's probably going to come again. So schools and governments needs to be ready. But coming back to your question, the portfolio companies I work with now, it's of course that what's happening in the world right now is the first time. No one was really prepared for this. But it's also what I'm trying to do, and the companies I work with, is to always talk to the market, always talk to the customers, knowing what they're going through, knowing what the challenges is, and has that work with that kind of feeling. And in these type of times when we are right now, I spend most of my time on the phone talking to different companies, even though they are not buying anything or doing any major things. They are more in reconstruction, analyzing the situation, but you will get the information on where they're going, where they're heading. So this is a great opportunity for any company to talk to the market, understand where they're going, see if you can adapt to what's happening. And when I look at my portfolio, the different companies we work with, of course, there are some companies that are, you could say, they're quite cold. they have a tough challenge, especially companies within the travel industry. But then there are others that are very interested and are really busy at the moment. So it's not the whole continent of the world that's a standstill, but it's some areas are really busy at the moment. So, but in this type of times, it's also to listen again to the market, to the customers, and try to figure out what you're doing, if you can help anyone with your solution, that you maybe have a solution for a specific purpose, but can that be used to something else? So this is the opportunity to look within your company, talk to the customers, see how you can help them. So that's what I'm trying to do. I talk with my different companies I work with, understanding how what they're doing, what their customers are saying, and I talk to the customer I work with, and then we see, okay, can you tweak your solution a little bit? Could that fit into the purpose they are looking for? And during this time now before the summer and probably Q3 as well, this is all about marketing and communication, because most of the companies will not invest anything. They will probably be ready for Q4, end of Q3, Q4. So it's also try to keep some of the companies calm, to maybe spend time developing a solution and improving, because when do you have the time to do that without any customers calling or any customer complaining or whatever it can be? So you take the opportunity to develop your solution and then adopt and see what you think could come out of this. And also what I'm doing now is also looking into different new areas to expand the portfolio of companies I work with. One of the things that have been huge in Europe is the agri-tech. A lot of farms don't have the manpower at the moment to harvest, and that comes back to us that we'll have food if they can't harvest. So now is the time for them to invest in technology to be more efficient. So that's an area where I look into at the moment, and that's 3 months ago. I would say I nearly knew nothing about agri-tech, but now it's more or less on the agenda every day. I talk to different agri-tech companies, talk to different farmers, and try to understand how this could fit in and be an opportunity. So it's if you listen to the market, there will be a lot of opportunities coming up from this, but you need to always keep moving, keep listening to the market and the customers, and then prepare and adopt your solution and your company to what you believe and think will come out of this.
You were mentioning opportunities and how you are shaping your portfolio, but I have a question. We have a lot of startups, and for example, one of them just contacted me with COVID-related solutions, and then he asked me help introducing him to some leads here in New York City. But there is so much noise and there is so much going on out there. My question is how these entrepreneurs or these companies can be heard at this moment, how we can facilitate their path. Should they rely on people with very close connections, or it is okay to start with cold calls? How are you managing the communication with your prospects and leads, helping the companies to get to their key customers at this moment?
It's always tricky to have cold calls in this type of time, but it's because they would probably come back and say we are not in the situation we're going to buy anything. But it's also, I think it's listen to people, read newspapers, make your own assumptions, talk to people, use your advisors. This is in these type of times. This is when your advisors are the most important. So this is when if you have a startup, you have your board of directors, you need to talk to them. They need to give you the insights. You need to talk to a lot of people. So, but again, talk to customers, talk to different people. Some people will have more time than ever to talk to you. That's also one of the good things in this, because people are maybe not as busy as normal, but so you can get the insights. But it's, I think advisors, the ones you have, and connect with new ones, and try to follow as many news leads that you can, and think how your company and your solution can adopt to these, and try to understand what the type of companies are will challenge, what kind of challenge they will have in the future, because sometimes they don't even know themselves. So if you just think of the situation they are in, what will happen when they open up? What would I need to do? Do I need to hire people? Do I need to, how do I, as Isabel mentioned, the digital, they need to be more efficient. They need to have different solutions. Could my solution and my company fit into that? How can I introduce them and promote my solution to them at this point? So they know about what you're doing when they're ready to invest, when they're ready to buy. So it's not one thing that I will say like, this is the key. But it's a lot of things. You need to be alert. You need to follow what's happening, and also think for yourself. How could we take this opportunity and adopt our solution to to the market, and listen to and make sure you have the right advisors. That's
if I may add to just what you just said, I would really recommend everybody. I can hear my voice. I don't know if the sound is okay. I will continue, but everybody should read books from Timothy Ferriss, and about the art of personalized communication to strangers. I mean, if you wanted to reach a CEO in New York, as you were mentioning earlier, Gisleine, you have to have done your homework and be specific about something you can bring to that person or to that company very short. Within 2 minutes of reading, someone should have, just the curiosity to say, okay, there might be something there. So the object of your email, if it's an email, has to be very different, attractive. So you have to be creative in the relationship you build when it's cold call. And you have to really show that you are very interested in them specifically, know something about them. We all know the old trick of having seen an interview, of read an article about a CEO or something. So you have to be very personalized in your approach, or being, and you have to show you are knowledgeable and that you can bring something to the table. And at this time, I think that you have to be very generous with your knowledge before thinking of selling things. So it's about building new relationship about sharing and about being open source, let's say, and be very generous with the community. And then there's a relationship that can be built on.
You've talked about approaching people, creating relationships. Can you two talk about specific traits that Canadians or North Americans have when they are doing business in Europe? Johan, you are European, but of course, as an outsider, you can view how North Americans, they do businesses in Europe. And Isabelle, as a Canadian, I think you can feel it under your skin, the difference. Can you talk about this different aspects of doing business in terms of cultural approach?
Well, let's give the it will be, I'm looking forward to hear Johan about his European perspective, because it can maybe not fit exactly what is the brand, the Canadian brand, the Quebec brand. I think that we are seen as very, we can discuss and criticize while we are among us and while we are within our own community. But from abroad, I think that companies and people are seeing us as very, of course, a friendly people, very reliable, that our product and services, they have the stamp of quality because of where it's coming from. We are seen as very green as well, very social and forward thinking in terms of how we live together. And it brings a sense of creativity and of the fact that we are so little in terms of numbers, and that it means that we have to be agile and inventive. And Montreal is seen, of course, as very creative, a city of design, a city of festivals. And I think that, maybe in the last 10 years, I don't know when it was started, there's the ranking of people, of countries that is easy to do business with. And we always perform very well because we're not that bureaucratic, even though we think some of our organization or government is. So this green friendly, easy to work with, very adaptable, and not thinking that we are humble. We are confident but humble. So we are not seen as a threat, because USA can be seen as a threat, China is, and among European countries, to do partnership or to buy something from another country in Europe, you might be a bit scared about what will happen with the information you're sharing. If it's in, let's say, in the digital transition, there's a lot of data. We are seen as friendly and secure about that.
Okay, and Johan? You're muted.
There you go. Yeah, the difference between Europe and US, as you mentioned, I'm not an expert in Canada, but I've done business with people from US, and I think one of the challenges and one of the differences between Europe and US is that companies from US are they're quite tough. They're coming from US, it's a big country, coming to Europe, a smaller country in Europe, they will tell this is what you need. In Europe, you do business more on relationship. You have to know each other. It's a little bit longer process. So sometimes people in Europe can be quite offended that someone tells you, you need to do this. Otherwise, if you don't do it, you will be behind. You will lose money. So they're quite tough and straightforward from US. And I think my experience from Canada is you're a little bit in between, more like Europe. And I think many people from Europe believe that Canada is also more similarities to Europe than with US. So I think it's easier, and as Isabel mentioned, like humble and understanding, but quite tough as well, but not as many Americans can be seen. And I know companies in Europe that they prefer to do deals with a small local company compared to big US company, because it's also a way of knowing each other. So I think that's the main difference. And it could also be that the US think bigger. Many companies from Europe don't always strive to have global dominance. It's like, I will be happy to be big in Spain or Portugal. I don't need to go to US. I don't need to go to France. But many US companies need to be in all US. They want to be big from the beginning. So I think that's also mentality, a difference. And also heard from some place a funny story about the owner of Zara, when he mentioned what he wanted to do, when he has want to sit in his piazza and drinking coffee. He's one of the richest guys in the world, and you're not talking about all the cars.
But now that he has dominated the world, he can say so.
His goal is to sit and drink coffee. So.
And Gisleine, you know what I'm seeing here as well is that some major corporations or even public organization, they are quite, I would say, proud to have found a boutique solution from Montreal, than to brag about having the big SAP structure. You know, they like to be the one that have found something different, but that works, of course, and that is very reliable. But that's also a kind of a sense of proudness of finding the company in the world, the startups that offer something different. So that gives us and gives the startup in Quebec and Canada an edge on that sense as well, before growing and becoming the next unicorn throughout the world.
Great. It's time to start with the Q&A. We have 3 questions here. One first for Johan, to talk about the VC funding panorama in Europe and how you see it, how you have taken advantage of it. You think that it's changing, and what are your future perspectives for it? You were muted.
Sorry, I missed the first part of the question. The investment or?
Yes, the VC funding panorama in Europe. How do you see it?
Again, you can make the investment panorama in Europe. It's very local. Again, if you want to find investment, you need to go to the major hubs in Europe. That's where the money are, also within the countries. But it's the thing I'm seeing in Europe now is that they are changing and adopting to maybe the way that they do investments in the US. Can you hear me? Yeah. How to do investment in US and Canada. Yeah. Where they're thinking bigger. Many times when we talk to investors in Europe, they are, if you searching for a certain amount of money, they will question you, okay, you want this 500k euros, what would you spend them on? And they will go through how you will spend them, instead of saying, okay, I want the company to be 10 times bigger in 2 years. How much money will you need? So that is a process changing in Europe at the moment, to think bigger more than to run a profitable company. Because that's many times the investors in Europe, even if they're a startup, they want to grow with profit, or at least to have a solid economy when they grow. And if you're looking at the major companies in software in the world, they haven't made any profit yet. Like, coming from Sweden, we have Spotify, it's still not making any money, but it's worth a huge amount of money. So they are investing and growing. And I think that's mentality is now changing in Europe. And also what I'm working on in Europe as well is to get the investors to come to the companies instead of the companies coming to the investors. Because the biggest investment hub in Europe is London. London is one of the most expensive places to be. So why should you go as a startup to London? Not complaining about London, it's a great place, but still, running a startup in London is far more expensive to do it in any other country. But if you go there just for the investment, the money you will get will be spent quicker. So that's also what you see in Europe. More and more of these startups are moving to smaller cities because it's cheaper. You can find cheaper manpower. And a lot of companies are, as we now, I'm in Spain, Barcelona and Madrid is growing quickly on the startup scene because you have a lot of talent, and the salaries are lower here than other places in Europe. So then also the investors have to come here. They have to come and meet the companies where they are instead of you going to that. And I think that's the biggest challenge for the investors, that they now need to travel more, and that's changing in the whole culture of investment in Europe. It's going slowly, but it needs to happen, and I think it's started to happen now.
Great, thank you, Johan. Isabel, what are the marketing channels that you believe can be leveraged to target European customers? Any insights on how to plan communications compared to Canadian customers?
I'm sorry for the person who asked the question, but this is a question that is very broad, and that it would take me and Johan probably half an hour or at least 15 minutes to answer, because it depends.
1 minute.
No. So what I want to say, Gisleine, though, is that if you think of exportation, and if you just wanted to enter into that reflection in Quebec, the way we are structured, and it's now changing. So I wanted to mention about the news is that in the past, Export Quebec, who was part of the Ministry of Economy, is now merging with Investissement Québec, Invest Quebec, to be one, like a one-stop shop for foreign investment and for exportation, because in Quebec, we have a commercial trade deficit that our premier is really keen on diminishing, if I can say so. So we want to make it very easy for small and bigger company that thinks about international market. And what you have to look for is what we call ORPEX, that is kind of the regional export promotion organization. In Montreal, it's the Chamber of Commerce. In Quebec City, it's Quebec International. So you look for it, and this is your entry where they will help you answer type of questions like that. So first they do the diagnostic, the market identification, and then they will see what kind of program is there for you as well. And when you seem to be more ready, we, when we are on the on the market, help answer questions like that in terms of marketing channels and distributors and buyers, and what are the opportunities here that are many coming up in Europe with the Green Deal coming from the European Union. There will be a lot of investment for smart cities, for urban thinking, e-bike, e-cars, all things like that, and make Europe really want to take a plunge into fighting the climate change. So let's be open up for all those opportunities. And May 25th, 1 p.m., there's a webinar from the Ministry of International Relations, Nadine Giraud, online, and you can find out about who are those regional promotion agencies. So this was my pitch of the day, Gisleine.
Thank you very much. A last question. We will need to be short answering this one. It's from Florence So, and she says, I have been Canadian for 30 years, but I'm a visible minority. I'm Asian. Do you think it's harder now with COVID to do business having an Asian face in Europe? I'm asking specifically if you believe that that business discriminates. A tough one to conclude.
I'm going to risk this one. I feel right now it's less of a case in Europe than it is in North America, because of all the political buzzword or and I have to say that since Italy and Spain has been also a very lived through this crisis very heavily, I don't think that these countries will look at this with a specific who's responsible for that. But I think it's lesser in Europe than in North America. That would be my take. I don't know what Joanne is thinking about that.
I will agree. I don't know exactly how it will be in North America, but I don't think it will be a major problem. There is a lot of Asian companies in Europe anyway, and Europe are depending on Asian companies. So I don't think that will be a challenge. No, I can't see that as a problem.
Right. Okay.
Of course, there can be different people that would have a different opinion, but I don't think it's. If you have a good solution, that will not have an impact on.
Great. Okay. Thank you. We are about to finish, and I could stay here discussing with you hours and hours and hours. But unfortunately, we will need to close soon. Any final word that you would like to share, like 30 seconds, 1 minute, final word with our audience today? Isabelle and Johan?
If I start, my suggestion, as I mentioned before, is take the opportunity now to listen, learn, and talk to the market and the customers as much as you can, and see what your solution and your company can do to help them. Try to understand their situation and adopt what they are searching for, and promote your solution at this point. This is the perfect opportunity to promote and marketing what you do.
Thank you very much, Johan. Isabelle?
I would say that there is no such thing as an average exporter. You have to be expert. You have to be above everybody in terms of knowing what you wanted to do. So you cannot be average.
Okay, so you should be very good and do your homework, as you said today.
And be passionate and be a high, heavy worker on what the journey is going to be, and patient.
Thank you, Isabelle. Well, at the end of this panel, I would like just to make a quick recap about what were the objectives that we had for today. So we wanted to understand the changes in the European landscape and how it can create opportunities for Canadian startups. new market demands, cultural aspects, the venture capital panorama, insights for entrepreneurs, Canadian and Quebec entrepreneurs to soft land in Europe, but most importantly, to broaden our horizons, our inspiration, and our knowledge about international markets. Thank you very much, Isabel, Johan, for joining us. To everyone who has participated, please stay tuned and pay attention to our next events. Sign up at d3center.ca so you can have our newsletter and be updated on it. Next week, we will have the discussion with the social entrepreneur, the successful founder of an ascendant company. And I'm looking forward to having you with us. So have a nice day. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm back. I don't hear you.
Johan, to see if he can join us for a while, because it will be nice just the 5 minutes,
Sure.
final minutes download. How did you feel?
I feel good. It's always a tough exercise because we are kind of being very general, and I'm wondering if people can get their insights, you know. I'm thinking I should have been more specific on few things, you know, to bring something more concrete, but you know what, I think we're learning every time. So please, if you get some feedback, that would be great, because we need that, you know, in terms of getting better at doing this.
Feedback. Isabel, I think you were great. And we were able to go back to the question when we deviated. We had a lot of questions from the audience. We had 50 people, and most of the time, I think we had 10 or 12 questions, and they were coming on the side because people in the event, right, they were receiving it. That was a little bit confused, but it was okay. And the very beginning, I was also distracted because I started listening to the noise and I didn't know where it was coming from.
But
and suddenly my mind was not in the text that I should say.
But you're good. I mean, you're good. You're good. I was thinking, okay, where should I write to her? You know, is there a chat that I can just send a message to Gisleine? But it was very quick. I think 30 seconds, and then we didn't hear anybody. We could hear you well. It's just that it was a bit disturbing. But for me, it didn't feel like you were distracted at all.
Really? Okay,
So,
I was very distracted.
No.
Where's my mind?
No, don't be worried. It looks like it was exactly the introduction you had planned. So
Okay.
no worry at all. I don't know if you are freeze or if it's me.
Back from the other participants that were listening from our community, but I think it was great. They could have this feeling about doing their homework, that there are support for them, because even if you do your homework, what I'm experiencing here, Isabel, in New York, is that people, they do their homework, but they are so afraid. Of course, I think we are working in different environments. In New York, it's very challenging for most of the entrepreneurs. And they feel that. So everybody says, oh, you should be super ready, you should be super good, you should be strong, otherwise you don't step in. And when I started talking to people here, I realized that if I don't minimize this talk, they will never come. And they need to come to understand, otherwise they will never be ready. And we have a lot of startups in early stages. So if they wait until they are ready, they won't be ready.
Yeah. And there will be another American startup that will be bolder and that will move faster. You're right. Yeah. In a sense, it's just that what I'm seeing now, right now also, is that people, wanted to export, and they say, you know what? Maybe Spain, France, and Germany, that looks good but it's very different. And there is one thing that I have not said, but for the French speaking in Montreal, it's easier as a step to go France before Spain, because then you get used to working in Europe, but within the same language, and you know all the legal things, the trade agreement, blah blah blah. It's within, and it's easier to go to Spain before South America, because Spain is a smaller market, so you can fail here but still be good after with the large market of South America, even though the culture is different, even though the lifestyle is different. Just for the language and just for approaching the market, Spain or some provinces of Spain can be a bad test, and then go for the major opportunity of South America in terms of number of people. So anyway,
and I have this impression, having worked with startups in Montreal, that this bridge between Montreal and France is the easiest one.
Yeah,
and we pave it with a lot of programs, and it was the starting point. They don't mention quite easily Spain and Portugal.
No.
Although
it has to be very specific.
Yes, but although it can be a very important testing market for them as well. So they can start there, they can go to a Latin, but they are always aiming at the border. And first, I think after France, they are aiming at French-speaking countries, which Switzerland and so on, Belgium.
Yeah.
And then later, maybe go south. So in terms of markets, I feel that in Spain and Portugal, you are like raising your hand, please come. And this is the implications of coming, do your homework, be bold, and blah, blah, blah. And in New York, I'm also saying, please come, don't be afraid.
Yeah. I must say that here, Gisleine, we're helping more established company than startups. I have to say that it's not a first entrance company, not at all. And it has to be very specific about, in a sense, my job right now is to see what is the business case of Spain for Quebec, and before this crisis, smart tourism was one, because we have we're not a tourism hub in Canada or in Quebec, but we have a lot of digital solutions that can be applied to do this digital transition, smart hotels for museum in terms of AR, VR, all those things, and for all the creative industries as well, and for transportation. Here, we have major success. The Big C of Montreal, it's the one that has won the bike sharing bid here in Barcelona. And another company that developed communication system, they got the bid for, and they're not huge, they're SMEs, and they got the bid from the train system here in Catalonia, thinking about, we want a boutique solution that will be the biggest contract for that company, and that it will treat us like king, and train culture, transportation is huge in Spain in terms of fast train. Spain has the second longest networks after China.
Wow.
So you have to be very, very specific about what are the opportunities, and like smart cities, it's going to be something big here.
Smart cities, train transport, and the one that you mentioned at the beginning, which is the entertainment industry, with all the lights and the systems that we have in Montreal.
Yeah.
Oh, I can definitely see it in Barcelona, in Europe, with all these outside festivals and happenings and gatherings.
I have something to offer you, is that we have the largest representation of Quebec in North America is in New York, in the Rockefeller Center. And my colleague, Catherine Loubier, if you can write something, I don't know if you know her. You know her, okay.
And
you've heard of her.
Awesome.
Great.
Like
okay.
you, yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Okay,
and
because
team is also very, of course, and on a daily basis, I know I'm not working with her, I'm working with her team. I'm working a lot with Annie Lee and Susan Park and the rest of the trade.
Wow, okay, good news.
She's super good.
Okay, well, I think Joanne is not joining, and I have a call with my boss in 15 minutes because I have a boss.
We all have this big brother watching us. So Isabel, it was a pleasure. I told you a long time when you moved to Barcelona. So if you go to Lisbon, we have a very nice apartment, me and my family, in Chiado. So if you want to use it, please be your guest.
What? Yeah, I didn't remember that.
I think it was on the turmoil when you moved. It was a long time, but whenever you want a place to stay, it's very nice. It's noisy, yeah, because it's very much besides the market. Have you been to Lisbon? Of course.
Yes, and I love it. I was there for the Web Summit in last November. But
Michelle, yeah. So whenever you want to use it, let me know, and the keys are yours. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Hopefully we'll see each other in New York, and if you come for a fun trip here in Spain, please let me know.
And I took your advice, huh? I'm living the life.
Where exactly? But you live by the Central Park still, eh?
Yeah, 86 with Central Park West.
Amazing.
No, it's a very nice apartment, big, large. I have 3 kids, a dog, so it's large. But I really miss the house, and then I rented this one for the time.
Okay.
Because
So you might change the plan.
No, it's just for
Okay.
the quarantine, but we are there.
Ah, okay. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity and thinking about me.
Oh, it was a pleasure, and thank you for accepting the invitation. Have a nice day.
Let's hope.
Bye.
Okay, ciao.